Welcome to the Ascension Stargate podcast series, where we discuss the aspects of human consciousness, spirituality, metaphysics and philosophy, energy, extraterrestrial life, science, biology, and the alchemy of higher states of beingness, all from a heart-centered perspective. I am your host and guide, Glenn Mate, and let's begin our journey. Hi everybody, I'm Glenn Mate here with the Ascension Stargate podcast series, and I have just another amazing guest today. Today, this lovely woman is an intuitive, she's a channel, she is a hypnotherapist, she has her own business, she speaks publicly about metaphysics. Today we're here with the wonderful and most beautiful Stephanie Massengale, and welcome to the show. Thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to explain some about channeling today and hope the audience enjoys it. It'll be fun.
Oh, it's going to be a great one. So, again, thanks for joining us. And I want to just dive right in. So, Stephanie, you've been channeling for some time. And can you tell us a little bit about the story on how you got into channeling and maybe a little bit about how long you've been channeling?
Well, I've been channeling Ari with the Arcturian Protectorate for about 18 years. And if we go back to 2006, I had almost died from celiac. So I had a period of time where I had more of what I've had two near-death experiences in my life. One was a full near-death where I was dead for several hours and in a coma as a child. That was when I was around 12 years old. And then the second one is something that a lot of people don't understand or don't talk a lot about, is what they call a near-death experience. And that's where you don't flatline, but I went an extended period of time without oxygen. And so it created hypoxia. And so because of celiac, I did not have any oxygen for about 3 weeks is what they guessed. And so I didn't have any iron or B12 in my body of any kind. So I had to do all these infusion treatments. And after that time, I had about 6 months where I didn't work at all. And then I went back to teaching. I was a pre-K teacher for students that were nonverbal autistic. So they were 3 and 4 year olds. And so what happened was that the very first day I was back to work, there was this beautiful little boy, he had dark hair, little indigo child, for those familiar with the indigo children. And he started talking to me in full telepathic sentences saying, "Hey, I don't understand the talking thing. Can you explain it to me? I just don't get it." And I thought, was that my thought? Is that his thought? And then the next day, his dad drops him off and he says, "Oh, my dad told me the best joke today in the car." And so he tells me this joke. And I thought, well, what are the odds? And so the dad comes to pick him up and I say, "Hey, have you heard this joke?" And he says, "Yeah, I told him that joke today in the car. That's so weird, you know?" And I was like, well, what do I do with that? And so this is back when the movie The Secret came out, for those that remember when The Secret came out. And a friend had sent me the movie in the mail and I didn't realize what it was about at all. And so I ended up watching that movie and I thought, well, I need to figure out more about this metaphysics stuff. And back in those days, Meetup was brand new. And so there was a meetup about the movie The Secret. And I went there and there was a lady there who was a psychic. And she was offering an all-day class on developing your intuition. I thought, well, let me go and just figure out what happens. And she handed out these little crystals to people. And she was a big believer of, let's see what you can do. Let's not just jump into reading books, because once you start locking yourself into reading, sometimes you cut off abilities you might have had and did not know. And I did not know that. And she asked each person, "What do you think about this crystal?" And I said, "There's a little woman in here and she's talking to me." And she said, "Stay after class." So I stayed after class. And she said, "Okay, you've had a sudden Kundalini awakening from this near-death experience. What are you going to do with that?" And at the time I was, recently divorced and 3 kids. And, I was like, I have no idea. And she gave me the best advice I've ever gotten, which was learn to manage your abilities or they will manage you. And I thought, oh, I better figure this out. So in the beginning, what I was really good at was past life readings. And so what would happen is I would look at you and I would see a globe behind your head in my third eye, and the globe would spin and it would land on Morocco. And I'd see your whole past life, and then I would, help people balance past lives and clear out past lives. I did that, and I started training with her. And I'd been training for a couple of years, well, maybe a year. And we went to a party, and there were 4 ladies there that were being trained by her. And one of the ladies stood up at this party, and she said, "Wouldn't it be great to talk to somebody on a spaceship, an ET on a spaceship?" And I was like, sure, Carol, whatever. We can make that happen, whatever. And she said, no, let's really do it. And she stood up and declared to the heavens, hey, any of you friendly ETs out there that want to come on down, you just come on down and we'd love to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
And in my head, I saw this chalkboard. And on the chalkboard, they wrote out the word, but I was literally reading it as they were writing. I said, I see a chalkboard. And my mentor, Sonny, said, what does it say? I said, Arcturian, Arcturian. And none of us had heard of it. We didn't know what it was. And we Googled it. And it said, loving fifth dimensional beings here to help with the evolution of consciousness of the planet. So Sunny knew how to channel. She had actually channeled before, and I had not. And so she channeled Arya the first night. And Arya said, you're not the right genetic link that I need. It's one of these other three women, right? And so we tried Carol at first, and Carol would make the connection, and then she would close her eyes and she wouldn't say anything at all. And about 20 minutes would go by and she'd open her mouth and she'd say, what did I say? And we're like, honey, you didn't say anything. So she was getting it, but she couldn't get it through the thing. And so I was nervous about doing it in front of my mentor. So we started meeting at Carol's house, the three of us, and just to see if I could do it.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, Arya would stand in the corner. And it was like translating German, it was translating a language. You'd ask a question and I would say, well, Arya says, blah, blah, blah. She'd answer the question. And we did that for about 3 months. And then one night I was sitting, we used to call it the channeling chair. I was sitting in this chair and she said, it's just like jumping on a train. And I didn't know what was coming. And she merged her energy with mine. And for about 2 minutes, I channeled. And it just felt as natural and easy as anything I've ever done. So that's sort of
that's an amazing
intro.
story. I love
It's been
that.
a wild, wild ride, honey.
Holy moly! Talk about getting on a train. You got on a jet rocket and just went to the sky with that. That's amazing. You mentioned that you saw Arya in the corner of the room while you were channeling. Can you expand a little bit about, that visualization and maybe explain to our listeners what Arya may look like so they can kind of get a mental image in their
Sure. So in psychic realm and psychic discussions, you can have what's called second sight. And people with second sight literally see her. I've had people say, I see Arya standing behind you, and they will describe her to me. Now, I don't have that. I have, when I talk about seeing it in your third eye, I will see it like a movie in my head, and I will see I can feel her energy standing in the corner, and I will see her, right? So she is what they call a blue Arcturian, which means that her father is from the star system Sirius, which is those beings are kind of blue in color, and her mother was Arcturian. And so they're like what you think an ET would look like. They're about, well, some are taller, but she's like about 4 foot tall, 4.5 feet tall. And she has 3 fingers and 3 toes and like a slit of a mouth. And their main, they ingest liquid protein. They don't eat food the way we do. They don't have teeth, anything like that. And they are extremely advanced beings spiritually. And they are known for the fastest and quickest spaceships in the universe is what they're kind of known for. And so when I first saw her in the corner, I guess I've just always been curious, and having taught school for so long, I just thought, okay, let me play with this. I was just sort of like, okay, let's just see what happens. And I was just kind of curious about it. I wasn't like freaking out or anything like that. I mean, as things moved along, there were times I was like, I don't know if I want to do this, I'd sit with it and be like, I don't know. And for those that are listening, there's a big difference between being a conscious channel and being an unconscious channel. And an unconscious channel is Edgar Casey. Edgar Casey would go into state, share information, remember nothing at all. I'm a conscious channel, but over the years have become more unconscious, as in I'm aware totally of what I'm doing, but it's a little bit like a dream. So like years ago, maybe it would last 2-3 hours. Now I might remember for 20 minutes, it's gone. Unless it's something really poignant, I won't remember it. It's just the nature of channeling. It's there and then it's gone. You're bringing through the information. You're not really, you know what I mean?
Right. That resonates with me because when I channel, it's kind of like I move my personality and my consciousness aside to allow something to come in, and it's just like the Rolodex is spinning, but you're not grabbing any card out of it of that information, right?
Right, right, right. And in the beginning, Ari would say, imagine you're in the forest and there's a log. I want you to go sit on the log and I'm going to merge into your body and you're going to watch from the log. And that was a way we did it in the beginning. But because I've died twice, she merges with me different than most channels. She actually interweaves her entire energy. Like if you took a rug that had two colors that are braided, she has interwoven her energy into mine because of my medical issues in the past. And she just wanted to make sure she had a really good link. And most people don't do it that, most beings I've not seen do it that way. And I think it makes for a stronger connection and a better connection.
I would absolutely say so, because you're almost like you're melding on a physical level
Yeah.
and energetic level. So that is, a super strong connection. And, I've heard you channel before, and I've heard
Yes, you have.
Araya, and I think that, your information is very good, very cognizant, very quick, very fluid. So that's just wonderful. And I want to go back just a little bit.
Okay, sure.
You mentioned something about an indigo child and being a teacher. And I think this is important in today, and I want to talk to Araya about this.
Mm-hmm.
When you were teaching, did you notice that there was an influx of these indigo children? And maybe just from your perspective, if you could explain what you would interpret or your perception of what an indigo child is.
So there's a great book by Megan Losey called Children of Now. And it's an older book. It's probably 20 years old now. And that book does a great job. It has like little questionnaires and it actually breaks it down into like rainbow children and indigo children. But basically, these are children whose souls are really not your basic human soul. They are ET souls that have chosen to come in at this time in history to incarnate into the planet. And in that book by Megan Losey, there's a chapter called The Beautiful Silent Ones. And that's talking about the children that are nonverbal autistic. And they are sort of, to me, a separate category from regular autism. In particular, this little boy was genetically unable to speak, which I thought was interesting. He had a very rare condition that made him unable to speak. And so a lot of them, their tongues are heavy. And because their energy is from so far away, and their energy is so light, and Earth is a heavy, dense planet, and they're telepathic by nature, they do not understand the talking thing. They don't know how to process that, and they're here to be like pure love. Arya calls them space holders.
Right.
That, in a time like this, when news is everywhere and everybody's got an opinion, these little children are just bundles of love. They're not watching the news. They don't care about the election. They're just here to be pure love. And I'm honored that my grandson, he's 11, his name is Ian, he's nonverbal. Oh. And so sometimes my son Andrew will call and I'll be like, okay, talk to Ian. What's he saying? Let me know what he's saying. And I'll call and I'll say, okay, this is what Ian is saying. And one of, I think, my favorite things in my career has been to be able to deliver messages between nonverbal people across the board, to whether they're nonverbal from Parkinson's or whatever is causing their nonverbalness, to their family members. And that's been great. I love that.
That is a huge skill, and I am so grateful that you just shared that, because there are so many people on this planet that don't have the verbal, and then many of their caretakers or some of their caretakers don't have the ability to interpret those emotional frequencies that they emit. So there is a huge disconnect, yet these individuals that you just called space holders, and I certainly believe that, because they're energetically holding this light and unconditional love for humanity, for people, and they're just constantly like the lighthouse beacon.
Well, they are, yeah.
It's really are. And to know a little bit deeper about what their thoughts are, is such a great skill, and thank you for sharing that, because where do we go when we need the bridge between that? How do we get the information if we're not in attunement, but we can understand verbal language, and you're the bridge for that? How exciting is that? I love it. That is wonderful. So thank you for sharing that with me. I so appreciate that. And I'm sure our listeners do too, because that might be a very important key for parents today that may have autistic children, or for anyone that's a caretaker or a medical professional that is trying to understand what these human beings are experiencing and what they need in order to make their life much better. So that's a great aspect.
Yeah, yeah.
So thank you for sharing that, Indigo.
You're welcome.
That was great. I want to jump a little bit further now, and what can you tell us about Araya?
Yeah, it's Arya.
Or
A-R-I-A.
Arya. I'm sorry,
Arya.
Arya.
You got it.
Arya.
Arya. There you go.
What can you tell about Arya that would kind of expand a little bit on how we would get to know her as an energy, as an individual, and maybe some of her history as an Arcturian?
Well, I've done a lecture that I did for a group called Spiritual Frontiers Fellowship in the summer that COVID happened. And if you want me to share that with you later, or give you access to that for your listeners, she actually
Sure, we can
shared
put the link on that.
history. Yeah. She shared her entire history. And one of the things there's a lot of things about her that are different from other people that I've seen channel. And it's just her style, I think. And she's like, why would you let a strange being come through you if you don't know their resume?
Mm.
I think it's a valid point. And so basically on the Arcturus planet, there was a time period that they had a prophecy that there were going to be 16 set of girls twins, 8 sets of these girl twins. And they would just sort of randomly appear on one of the Arcturus homeworlds. And on their planet, there's a lot of, babies that are in tube genetic kind of procreation kind of stuff. But that these girls would show up and they would be there to help change the society. Mm-hmm. And so she was one of the 2 girl twins. She has an identical twin named Arya, A-R-I-A. And that when they arrived, the Arcturians were so freaked out because Arcturians are very similar to each other. They have very similar attitudes, and they were there to help bring in more consciousness to the Arcturians. And so they were upset, and they sent them all off to the Syrian homeworld, and that's how she ended up learning a lot about the Syrian homeworld. And so she gives her history, but most of her career, well, not most of her career, she's like about 400 years old, and they live to be about 450. Okay. So she's towards the end of her life, let's say, but not at the very end. And so a lot of her life, early life, she was like a dorm mother, she said, to like a bunch of young girls, like in pods, like sort of like going away to boarding school. And then she was known for being a pilot. What most people know Arya for is her piloting skills. She's one of the best pilots in the universe. So that's what she's most known for, is piloting. But back in 1954, she was part of, her husband at the time was a Syrian diplomat, and he was part of the contingent that came in 1954 with Valiant Thor to talk to Eisenhower, and she was there for all of that. And so what happened was her husband was killed in an incident, and she was the only one left around knowing the information. And so that's how she first got into being an ambassador and negotiating. She's been in the Earth Project since 1954.
Wow, that's amazing. And, that has a great historical value, too, when we go back to Eisenhower.
Yeah.
And he tried to explain to the American public the rise of the industrial military complex and to be aware of that.
Right, correct.
So that's a great historical moment. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, she'll talk about, she's pretty, unless it's something that she's not allowed to talk about for diplomatic reasons, she's pretty wide open. She'll talk about almost anything. Not anything, but pretty close.
All right. So how about we bring Arya in, or Arya. I don't know why I'm having problems with that, so I apologize.
No, that's all right.
Arya, let's bring Arya in and see how she is today, and we'll ask her some questions and ask her to explain a little bit about herself.
All right. You ready?
I'm ready. Thank you.
All right. I intend Arya. This is Arya, the Arcturian Protectorate. Well, hello, it's all right. We can give me a new version of my name. I'm ready for it. We can say Araya or whatever you've got going on. I like it. It's pretty.
Arya, I thank you for joining us today, for bringing in your energy through Stephanie. And I would love to know a little bit about your process and your mission in evolution in human consciousness, because I'm
All
so
right.
integrated with that. So if you would explain a little bit about that, please do.
All right. So you want to know about evolution of consciousness is what you're talking
Yes.
about in general. So that's part of my project. That's a big deal for me. That's part of why I'm on Earth, is to help with the evolution of consciousness. And it's not just all humans. It's a lot of beings that live on your planet that aren't human. There's a lot of different creatures that live here, not just humans, right? So there's the inner Earth people, for example, right? So it's about consciousness for everyone, and it's happening throughout the entire universe. It's not just galactically this part of where you are in time and space. It's not that. It's happening everywhere. It's happening on my home world. It's happening across time and space. And it's an important time in history because we're in a quickening phase where things happen really fast. And so to keep it simple, Stephanie learned dimensions. Third dimension is like you can put your hand in a cup, right? And fourth dimension is time itself. And fifth dimension, everything vibrates at the frequency of love or higher, that heart-centeredness you love to talk about.
Yes.
And so that's where we're headed. We're trying to get the collective on Earth at frequency of love or higher, right? Now, David Hawkins was a lovely person, and he had this lovely scale of consciousness. So if Jesus is at 1,000 and neutral is 200, love frequency is a 500. And for most of the time, humans have been under 200 or around 200. But in the last 30, 40 years, you're somewhere between 200 and 500, but not as close to 500 as we would like, if we look at everybody. Now, if you have one person that's super advanced in consciousness, they can hold the space for thousands of people, right? That aren't that high, if that makes sense at all. You with me so far?
Absolutely.
All right. And so that's why every individual consciousness matters. You might think, well, I'm not that important. I just, I'm a garbage collector. I work as a secretary in the thing. It doesn't matter. It's about love quotient. It's where is your love quotient? That's what I look at. And I look at where did you start and where did you end up? So maybe when I meet someone, their consciousness is at 300 and they make a 20-point gain. Well, that's pretty good, right? But every once in a while, we have those ones that make a 300-point gain. That's fascinating. How fast can that consciousness go? And near-death experiences tend to be around 650. That experience tends to jump them very quickly, well above love frequency. A lot of the intellectual people of your planet, professors and people that run corporations, they're all in the 400s for the most part. Like they're close, but they're not where they need to be exactly, or where I'd like to see them be, right? And so that's what we're here for. We're here to expand. We're not here to constrict. We're here to expand, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And one of the things I wanted to know and get your perspective on,
All right.
this is a historical event that took place in the United States, in New York City, and we deem this as the 9/11 event.
Were you there or were you not there? Were you there, honey?
I was there shortly thereafter.
I thought you were, yes.
So what I learned through the HeartMath Institute is that the HeartMath Institute was taking the actual resonance of the planet that has to do with the frequency of love and compassion. And what we noticed is that the day of that event, that the love and compassion took a very big nosedive and then a very big trajectory all the way up, because so many people simultaneously became interested and compassionate simultaneously. And it changed the trajectory of our consciousness and opened up a door where we became more heart-centered as a planet. Can you explain what your perception of that particular expansion of consciousness was and how you see that?
You're talking about Howard Martin's work, right, with HeartMath and all of that. I think it's
Correct.
Martin, if I got the name right. Heart-centeredness is called cohesion, right? It's about being in cohesion or being completely in sync with love frequency, I guess is the best way to put it. And it's not uncommon to have a tragedy plummet you to the depths of despair and then bounce you. You can get a bounce off of that into a state of compassion once you're out of the tragedy, or once you're, if you're in it, you're in it. You're not going to have that. but you can get a bounce after. And for those that are not actually in the tragedy, but they're observing the tragedy, they're in a better space to respond than those in it, if you follow me. You're like, oh, that's my fellow man. I need to go and help. And you saw that recently in Asheville with the
Yes.
hurricane Helene, the response of the local people really trying to get in there and help their friends and family. And NASCAR, hats off to NASCAR for going in and rescuing people with the helicopters. I'm like, you go. They felt really led by their heart to go and help with that. 9/11 is a big event through space and time. It's a reverberation of Atlantis. So when the crystals overcharged in Atlantis, it created a reverberation through space and time. And there are certain benchmarks in time that's actually directly linked to the implosion in Atlantis. Gettysburg is directly part of the Atlantis implosion. 9/11 is part of that implosion. The earthquake of 1906 in San Fran, part of that implosion through time and space. And it tends to reverberate, and it may reverberate around again. Hopefully not anytime too soon. I don't know if you knew about that or not.
I did not know about the reverberation, but that makes perfect sense. As when we take a stone and we drop it into the water, there's that rippling effect.
Correct.
And it works
Similar.
cyclically in a frequency that we don't necessarily know where the end is until the frequency loses its ability to sustain itself.
Right, right.
So that's I guess, my scientific definition of that.
Right. And if you were close to 9/11 or were pulled to help there or showed up shortly thereafter, that probably means you have some level of an imprint to Atlantis in some way or another, probably have a past life link. Or if you even were connected afterwards, Stephanie's done, I think, 5 readings for people that were there. And they found her. She didn't go over time. They found her. And so, and she's, if you're familiar with bilocation, that is an event that will pull you to the event. And so she's done a reading for someone that was there, and then all of a sudden she was there. Like, she literally could smell the smoke and the chemical smells, and she was physically walking down the street, and then I had to really work to pull her back out because she kind of had bilocated. That energy it's like a big magnetic pull. It'll pull you in,
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very unique time in history for sure. And it changed the timeline dramatically. You were on a certain path, and then that happened, and then we're somewhere else.
Yes, it certainly did. And, speaking of timelines, do you have some advice for us and our listeners on how we can continue to advance ourselves in more heart-centeredness to create a better version or a better life that we could have in our own realities? Do you have any tips or tools that might be beneficial to us?
Well, there's all kinds of things that would be beneficial. I don't do advice because I don't think it makes sense. I give suggestions. You do what you like. Free will, right? Free will planet. You got to do what you want to do.
Thank you.
So basically, what do you do with times like these? Is that what you're asking me?
Sure.
All right. So you got to stay in your lane. You've got to be the observer of your world. You've got to stay the observer of your world. Power always goes to the most powerful creator in the room. Look in your own family. Anybody can tell you who it is in your family that creates the best. Negatively or positively, they can tell you, oh, it's Uncle Bob. He can create like nobody's business, right? Remember that show, Everybody Hates Raymond, Everybody Loves Raymond? The mother-in-law across the street, boy, she created it, and everybody knew it, right? So it's like that, you need to be the leading actress or the leading actor in your own life. Don't be the supporting actress, right? And because there's so much misinformation right now, good luck finding the truth. Seriously, good luck, because everything's got a spin on it, got an opinion. If you get very heart-centered, you're going to know the truth. You're going to know, oh, this is the path for me to take. Maybe my family doesn't agree, but I know this is where I need to go. And then life becomes a really great thing to do. And then the other thing that's happening that everybody's not doing well is sleeping. So number one, you've got to sleep well. Because when you sleep at night, you go out on the astral plane. There's a lot happening out there these days. So you really want to have great sleep. Well, there's 4 pillars, really. There's nutrition, physical exercise, sleep, and then the hard one, stress. You've got to stay free of stress. And there's a simple test you can do. Easy test, 60-second test. Easy. Everybody can do it. So if you breathe in and breathe out, that's 1 cycle. You breathe in, you breathe out, that's 2 cycles, right? Mm-hmm. In 60 seconds, how many times do you breathe? You can breathe 8 or less complete cycles. That's meditative We don't go too low. 8 is around a meditated number. 8 to 14 is average. If you're above 14, that's anxiety. Now, I've seen people with numbers as high as 25 that have been diagnosed with severe anxiety. 25 cycles in 60 seconds. That's intense, right? So mindfulness, getting centered in the day, check your breath. It's an easy test. Anybody can do it. And then you'll see where your breath is, if that makes sense. So it's really incorporating some of these really simple skills. Segment your day. How easy is that? So between major things in your day, take 5 minutes at the end of your tiring work day and get centered in your car before you drive. Because what happens is your adrenaline gets running and your dopamine gets running, and it's hard to stop that. But if you just take 5 minutes of quiet time, close your eyes, set your timer on your phone, and then drive, what a better experience you're going to have, if that makes sense. I hope it does.
Absolutely. That's what I would call a scheduled pause. Taking time
I like
for yourself
nice too.
to ground, right? So
That's cool. I like that. Scheduled pause. I'm going to borrow that. May I borrow that? That's great.
absolutely, it is yours for the taking. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, so when we take the scheduled pause, or we institute that either in the beginning of our day or at the end of our day, that gives us the opportunity to become more in truth. We're becoming in really in the centeredness of who we really are. And we're then operating from that centeredness and not the high version of adrenaline or the high beta brainwave version. We're actually acting from more of our true self.
Well, correct. That's the idea.
Right. So thank you for sharing those suggestions on how we can best.
Every word matters in the universe. Every word has a rate of vibration. And I am a stickler about vocabulary because your vocabulary in many ways has been hijacked, and even you don't know the meanings of certain words. And your version of the word love might be different than mine. And if we're trying to communicate, that can be a real problem. So really having really heartfelt but really detailed conversations of understanding what you each mean by certain words is really important.
Yes, and one great master of Bruce Lee always said, be care of the words that you emit because you are spelling as you speak. So
Well, I agree with
the spell. And
it's true.
that is only confirming what your reality is going to show up in.
Well, absolutely.
So,
What's the blue thing on your shirt? I like it. What's the blue
the
symbol
blue
on
thing
your
on my shirt over here is the divine phoenix. So the
I love it.
rising of the ashes in blue over the pyramid, which is the Ben stone, or the very top of a pyramid, which is a
Fits your
very
energy.
important part for
It
energy.
does fit your energy. It does fit your energy.
So thank you for noticing that. I appreciate that. Arya, are there any other messages that you would like to impart with us and our listeners today that you might find would be suggestively beneficial?
Well, there's a huge difference, honey, between beneficial and best. Let's start there. So if it's beneficial for you, wearing braces is beneficial. It's painful, but you're going to have straight teeth at the end of the day, right?
Right.
And best is it's fun. Short definition. What is best for you is that it's fun and you enjoy doing it. And what I would love to see is people have forgotten how to have fun. They're too scared. I'm serious. They're too caught up in fear.
Very true.
And they really have lost their ability to have fun. And so anytime you can break someone's fear and help them, that's a great thing to do. Or just break their pattern. It's called pattern interrupt. And just help them be in a better pattern, you know. The lady behind the counter at the grocery store says, "Oh, how are you today?" She's expecting you to say fine. But if you give a really unusual answer, they'll blink at you, they'll double blink. It's really great. How are you today? "Oh, I just got off the plane from Europe. It was great." Oh, helping them understand that. Or you notice, oh, the girl behind the counter, "That's a lovely necklace. Where did you get that?" "Oh, it's from my grandmother." And you get the whole story, right?
Right.
We've got to reconnect again. After COVID, we really lost a lot of that ability to just be community and have basic conversations with other humans, right? So getting back into having that connection and not being so isolated. A lot of these young ones have anxiety and they're very isolated. And so we've got to get them back into the world, if you will.
Very true. And just by asking a simple question about themselves or something that we observe is that door opener for dialogue.
Right, right. And so I know it sounds simple, and I'm not trying to be trite at all. I'm just trying to help people. Because here's the problem: when you're under a lot of stress, you're too freaked out to do anything big. And I think a lot of people are trying to like redo all of their nutrition. What if you just said, okay, every day I'm just going to drink 8 glasses of water, and I'm not going to worry about anything else in my diet. I'm just going to get in the water. How much easier would that be? Because I think we try to bite off too much, more than we can chew, and then people don't do any of it. They just get locked up, you know?
Very, very true. I like to
And so,
say to many of the people that I work with that when we do 1% a day over a long time period, when we look at it a year, that's 365% that we've improved.
exactly. I love that. That's great. And you're on the right track with that. And so, you know, we're not going to be able to, whatever the big collective does is up to them. What we do individually is up to us. And you stay in your own rate of vibration, you won't be overly even aware of what's happening necessarily in the bigger game, though you will greatly influence the bigger game. It's like the tugboat, right? Got a little tiny tugboat. That little tiny boat pulls the big ship all the way out. How does it do that? It's a little tiny ship. And so that's what a lot of people that are your listeners and light workers are doing. We're the little tugboats trying to redirect the big ship, you know?
And we're
If that
making
makes
progress.
sense.
We're making more progress than we ever have before in this iteration of Earth. And I'm glad that you're a part of it and we're a part of it. And when we each do our own bit, our own personal work, you know, we are feeding that big collective consciousness and then moving things in a more positive direction in which we all prefer. So thank you, Arya, for being with us today. Thank you for imparting your wisdom and your perspectives. You are very much loved and appreciated. Thank you. And when you're ready, we could bring Stephanie back.
All right. And just, you know, we can put this in the bottom or whatever. You know, if you've managed to find this recording and you see Arya talking to you right now, everybody gets the first 20 minutes with Arya for free because your soul has found me. That means in some level you want to evolve your consciousness. So put that in the little box wherever you want to do that. You're lovely. And I'm going to go ahead and bring her back. We do this big count back thing, so give us a minute and you'll see.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. All right. You're welcome, sweetheart. I mean, ready to go. All right. So with that, Arya, move over. Reunion 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Matthew, Andrew, William, and Ian. Hello. That's my kids and grandkids.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie, for bringing Arya along with
Absolutely.
you today. And, you know, it's such a wonderful time to embody these higher learning perspectives, you know, to bring in some knowledge that brings in some recognition and some light and sometimes confirmation of things that maybe we already knew, and now we're like, okay, I'm anchored in on this idea and I can now move forward, and maybe I start doing my own work, or it gives me an opportunity to change in a way that's positive, that affects not only just myself and my own consciousness, but for everybody in which I get to interact with on a human level. So thank you so very much for being with me today, and, you know, again, bringing Arya around. How does someone get a hold of Stephanie if they're interested a little bit more in your work, in your channeling, and all of the great things that you do? Where can we find you?
All right. So my website is intuitivewisdomtoday.com. And that's a great way to reach me, or they can reach me at intuitivewisdom@gmail.com and connect that way. And then if they want to do sessions, I also have life coaching packages that I do. It's like 4 sessions in a month and it's an hour each week. That's at a discounted rate. And then because I do a lot of work with energy work and Reiki and hands-on healing and things like that, I have energy healing packages as well. And then of course you can always, if somebody just wants to talk to Arya, they always have that option. There's besides the free 20 minutes, you get that. If you ever just want to talk to Ari, it's 20 minutes is $40. Is that? Because I have people sometimes they just want to call and ask her some questions. So if I can get you on the schedule, I get you on the schedule. So.
I love that. Again, thank you so much for sharing your gifts and being such a wonderful human being. This has been a great opportunity to get to know you, and also to have our viewers and listeners in all of the internet land understand who Stephanie Massengale is as well. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate you, and I can't wait to have you back again sometime soon.
I would love to be back sometime soon. And you have a great afternoon.
Thank you, and we'll see you next time on the Ascension Stargate podcast series. Have a great one.